When a wounded soul begins to heal, something extraordinary happens. The world that once ignored your pain suddenly becomes attentive, almost uncomfortable, as if your restoration threatens the comfort of those who expected you to stay broken. There is a strange silence that appears when you rise, an uneasy quiet that echoes through the hearts of those who once fed on your suffering. They watch from a distance, unsettled, because healing has a way of exposing who truly cared and who only felt powerful when you were hurting. And now that your spirit is mending, their shadows look smaller, their voices weaker, their confidence shaken by the simple fact that you refuse to stay where they left you. There is a kind of misery that grows in the hearts of people who never believed you would stand again. They are unsettled not because you healed, but because your healing reveals their intentions. They see you reclaiming parts of yourself that they thought were gone forever. Your peace, your joy, your self-respect. And it burns them with a quiet jealousy they can no longer hide. Your strength becomes a mirror, showing them everything they lack. Discipline, courage, growth. While you rebuild with patience and faith, they remain trapped in the prison of their own bitterness, hoping your journey stops so they can feel comfortable again. But you kept going. You walked through nights where your own reflection scared you, where your heart felt too bruised to beat. You carried weight that no one knew existed. You prayed words that no one heard. And from that silent struggle you rose. Not perfectly, not quickly, but truthfully. And that honesty terrifies them, because it proves you were never defeated, only delayed. They see you smiling again and it disturbs them. They see you choosing yourself and it annoys them. They see you healing in ways they didn't expect, and it fills them with a quiet panic, not because your progress harms them, but because your progress exposes their failure to destroy you. The more you reclaim your life, the more they lose their imagined power over your story. Your healing is not just recovery, it is revelation. It reveals who loved you, who used you, who envied you, and who feared your potential. Now they don't know how to approach you. Your silence confuses them. Your peace irritates them. Your growth unsettles them. You becoming whole is the one thing they cannot control, and control was all they ever wanted. They are miserable watching you heal, because healing removes their access. It closes doors they once walked through freely. It rewrites chapters they thought they had authored. It lifts you to a place where their opinions no longer anchor you. Your rising breaks the illusion that they mattered more than they did. And perhaps the greatest irony is this: the same people who contributed to your wounds now suffer at the sight of your recovery. They never imagined that the very pain meant to break you would become the soil of your strength. They underestimated the resilience of your soul. They forgot that broken people who choose to heal become the most dangerous kind, because they no longer fear loss, manipulation, or abandonment. They know the cost of staying wounded and have chosen freedom. Your healing is your quiet victory, and their misery is simply the echo of a truth they can't escape. They lost the battle they started because you decided to rise. Healing has a strange way of revealing truths that were invisible when you were hurting. Pain clouds your vision, but healing clears it. When you finally begin to mend, something shifts around you, quietly, almost mysteriously. People who once smiled at your weakness become uneasy, because the moment you rise, their true intentions can no longer hide behind your suffering. Your healing becomes a light that exposes everything that was living in the shadows. When you were broken, some individuals found comfort in your silence. They felt powerful because you doubted yourself. They felt superior because you were struggling. As long as you stayed wounded, they didn't have to confront their own actions, motives, or hearts. But healing changes the atmosphere. The moment your soul starts stitching itself back together, their masks begin to slip. Suddenly your progress shows who genuinely cared and who silently benefited from your pain. You see, people reveal themselves not when you are hurting, but when you begin to heal. Pain makes you vulnerable, but healing makes you perceptive. In your brokenness, you may have believed their sympathy was real. Their support was sincere. Their words were honest. But now, as you rise, their responses betray them. Some grow distant, some grow cold, some grow irritated, and others grow strangely silent because your recovery forces them to face a truth they tried to deny. They never wanted to see you whole. Healing creates a divide, not because you changed, but because your growth shines a light on their hidden intentions. Some people were comfortable with you being confused, lost, or dependent. Your weakness gave them control. Your fear kept them relevant. Your wounds made them feel strong. But healing rewrites the dynamic. When you regain clarity, you see the manipulation that used to slip past you. When you regain strength, you notice who subtly pushed you down. When you regain self-worth, you recognize who treated you like you were easy to replace. Your restoration forces them to confront the truth. They liked you better broken. They liked it when you doubted your value. They liked it when you questioned your purpose. They liked it when you felt unworthy of love. They liked it when you believed you needed them. But healing dismantles those illusions. Healing teaches you to stand on your own. Healing makes you aware of your value. Healing shows you how capable, resilient, and strong you truly are. Suddenly they can no longer manipulate your emotions, control your decisions, or influence your steps. The power they once held quietly fades, not because you fought them, but because you reclaimed yourself. This is why your healing exposes their intentions. It shows you who was genuinely rooting for your recovery and who was secretly invested in your downfall. The ones who loved you will celebrate your growth, but the ones who envied you will shrink when you rise. The ones who cared will smile because you are becoming whole again, but the ones who fed on your pain will feel threatened because your restoration makes their hidden motives obvious. You will notice their reactions without trying. Suddenly, the people who claim to support you become strangely distant when you talk about progress. The ones who showed up during your darkest days seem irritated when the light returns. They were comfortable when you were struggling because your struggle made them feel important. But healing elevates you to a place where their relevance disappears. They cannot handle the version of you that no longer needs their approval. Healing also reveals something profound about the human heart. Some people do not hate your pain. They hate your recovery. Your breakthrough exposes their insecurity. Your rising highlights their stagnation. Your emotional progress reminds them that they have remained the same. They never expected you to outgrow the version of yourself they learned how to control. Healing breaks the script they created for your life. When you refuse to stay where they left you, they are forced to face the truth that their influence was always temporary. This exposure is not loud, it is not dramatic. It is subtle, quiet, and unmistakably clear. You begin to see through their actions, their silence, their change in tone, their sudden discomfort around your new strength. You realize they were never threatened by your pain, but they are deeply threatened by your healing, because healing proves something they never wanted to admit. You are always stronger than the wound, braver than the heartbreak, and more powerful than the version of yourself they tried to limit. Your healing exposes their intentions because healing restores your vision, and once you can see clearly, you cannot unsee the truth. Healing disrupts the illusion that some people created about you. When you begin to rise, something inside them begins to shake, not because your progress harms them, but because it dismantles the quiet power they once felt over your life. While you were hurting, they stood taller. While you doubted yourself, they felt wiser. While your spirit was weakened, they enjoyed an unearned superiority. But the moment you start rebuilding, the dynamic changes. Your restoration threatens the identity they formed around your weakness. Some individuals are not attached to you. They are attached to the version of you that needed them. They liked you uncertain. They liked you dependent. They liked you unsure of your own strength. Seeing you reclaim your confidence forces them to face a truth they never prepared for. The only power they had over you was the belief that you were too broken to rise. When you heal, that illusion vanishes and the ground beneath them shifts. Your healing disrupts their comfort zone. They grew accustomed to being the rescuer, the advisor, the one with the upper hand. But healing places you on solid ground again. You no longer look for validation. You no longer seek permission. You no longer tolerate the subtle ways they kept you small. This newfound strength scares them because their influence depended on your pain. They were confident only when you were insecure. They felt important only when you were lost. Now, as you grow, they shrink, not because you harmed them, but because they can't stand next to someone who is rising without feeling inferior. Some people measure their worth by comparing themselves to your struggles. Your pain kept them relevant. Your confusion kept them needed. Your brokenness made them feel wise. Now that you're healing, their internal balance is disturbed. They have to face their own weaknesses, insecurities, and stagnation. They were comfortable being ahead only because you were behind. They never expected you to recover, evolve, and outgrow the emotional space where they held authority. Healing exposes the truth about relationships built on uneven ground. When someone is invested in your weakness, your strength becomes a threat. When someone finds identity in your dependence, your independence becomes an insult. When someone feels superior because you were broken, your restoration becomes their downfall. Your healing reveals that their interest was never in your growth, it was in your struggle. They wanted access, not connection. They wanted control, not love. They wanted to feel important, not to see you become whole. The moment your heart begins to mend, their discomfort becomes visible. Some pull away because they no longer know how to interact with you. Some become passive-aggressive because they miss the version of you they could influence. Others grow jealous, not because your healing is extraordinary, but because it proves how strong you truly were all along. Your resilience exposes their weakness. Your clarity exposes their confusion. Your progress exposes their lack of growth. Healing does not only restore you, it reveals everyone around you. It separates those who genuinely care from those who benefited from your wounds. It pulls back the curtain on those who smiled while quietly hoping you would stay broken. This is why they feel threatened. Your healing is a reminder that they cannot define you, control you, or determine your destiny. You are moving into a place where their opinions no longer matter and their presence is no longer required. Your rising forces them to confront a painful truth. Their sense of power was never real. It existed only because you were hurting. And now that you are healing, the illusion collapses, leaving them exposed, insecure, and miserable as they watch the strength they never imagined you would reclaim. Healing brings with it an uncomfortable truth for those who never expected you to rise. Your growth highlights everything they refused to confront within themselves. When you were wounded, your pain gave them a sense of comfort because it made them feel ahead, superior, or more put together than they actually were. But the moment you begin to rebuild, that illusion dissolves. Your progress becomes a mirror that reflects their stagnation, their lack of effort, and their unwillingness to grow. They see in your rising the very things they avoided in their own lives: discipline, courage, emotional maturity, and the willingness to face inner wounds. Some people do not resent your healing because they wish you were hurting. They resent it because it exposes their complacency. Your healing is proof that change is possible, growth is real, and transformation is within reach. Instead of celebrating your progress, they feel threatened by it because it forces them to look inward, to acknowledge the work they have been avoiding. They see you doing the internal labor, crying, learning, unlearning, rebuilding, while they remain trapped in old behaviors and familiar excuses. Your progress silently challenges them, and that challenge makes them uncomfortable. As you rise, they become aware of the difference between someone who confronts pain and someone who hides from it. You faced your darkest moments and chose healing, while they buried their wounds and pretended they didn't exist. This contrast is confronting. It reveals that the limitations they accepted for themselves were not fate, but fear. When they watch you grow, they are forced to admit that their stagnation was a choice. And nothing feels more threatening to the stagnant than seeing someone they once pitied become someone they quietly envy. Healing also exposes the emotional laziness of those around you. While you were working through your brokenness, they were content staying the same. Now they see your discipline, how you chose boundaries, self-reflection, prayer, solitude, and self-respect. And it exposes the effort they never put into themselves. Your healing becomes a silent accusation, a reminder that they have avoided becoming better in their own lives. Instead of being inspired, some become resentful because your growth shatters the comfortable narrative they built around you. Your rising changes the emotional landscape. The people who once advised you from a place of superiority suddenly feel small next to your strength. The ones who believed they were ahead now realize they were simply stagnant, while you were temporarily wounded. The ones who saw themselves as emotionally wiser confront the reality that true wisdom is not found in appearing strong, it is found in choosing to heal. Your progress forces them to see that they were never ahead of you. You were simply carrying invisible battles that they never had the courage to face within themselves. This is why your healing feels like a threat to them. It redefines the entire dynamic. Their sense of superiority evaporates. Their imagined advantage crumbles. Their self-pity cracks under the weight of your growth. You become living proof of what they could not bring themselves to pursue, change. Your transformation makes them question their own choices, their own fears, their own wasted time, and instead of turning inward and growing, many choose the easier route. Presentment, not because your healing hurts them, but because it highlights the work they refused to do. This internal discomfort turns into envy. They see you reclaiming your peace while they still wrestle with their chaos. They see you rising in clarity while they remain confused. They see you evolving while they remain emotionally stuck. Your healing is not a competition, but to them it feels like one, because your progress unintentionally exposes the truth. They stayed the same. They feel miserable watching you heal, because healing is a mirror, and the reflection is not flattering. It forces them to confront the truth about their own life, a truth they would rather run from. Your growth becomes the silent testimony that they could have changed too, but they chose comfort over courage. And that realization makes your healing a reminder they cannot escape. Healing does not begin loudly, it begins quietly, often in the moments when your heart is tired of breaking, when your spirit is exhausted from carrying pain, when your soul whispers that it can no longer live in the same darkness. In those hidden places, you begin to rebuild. You start choosing yourself, even in small ways. You start thinking differently, even if it feels fragile. You start fighting battles silently that no one around you can hear, and this silent struggle, this invisible work, becomes the foundation of your strength. People see the surface of your healing, but they never witness the nights that shaped it. This is what unsettles those who once believed you would never rise again. They assumed your silence meant defeat, when in reality it meant transformation. They thought your isolation meant weakness, when in truth it meant reconstruction. They misinterpreted your quiet because they never understood the depth of your spirit. They did not know what it takes to heal because they have never had the courage to face themselves with the honesty you embraced. You went into the darkness alone, and you came out with a strength they cannot measure. Healing requires courage, real courage. Not the loud, showy kind, but the private kind that wakes you in the middle of the night and forces you to confront what broke you. It demands truth, the kind that makes you tremble but also frees you. It requires endurance, the willingness to keep going even when you feel yourself falling apart, again and again. And you chose all of that. You fought for yourself when no one else knew you were fighting. That kind of strength is not common. That kind of resilience is not found in those who only pretend to be strong. And when people see you surviving the very things meant to destroy you, something inside them shifts. Some become inspired, but others become uncomfortable. Your healing reveals a part of you they underestimated. It shows your depth, your resilience, your emotional strength. They see you rising from wounds they couldn't have survived. They see you carrying burdens they could not carry. They see you rebuilding pieces of yourself they expected to stay shattered, and instead of admiring that strength, they feel threatened by it. Because your ability to endure the storm exposes their inability to face even the smallest internal battles. Your quiet journey makes them question their own lack of growth. They wonder how you healed without help, how you rose without support, how you found strength when everything pushed you toward giving up. Your survival becomes a silent reminder of their own fragility. You endured emotional hurricanes while they collapsed under the weight of a drizzle. You faced heartbreak while they fled from minor discomfort. You chose healing while they chose avoidance, and this comparison, even though you never intended it, makes them uneasy. They watched you bleed, but they never expected you to bloom. And now they are faced with the undeniable truth that your spirit is far stronger than the wounds inflicted upon you. Your healing challenges the assumptions they formed about you. They believed your pain defined you. They believed your heartbreak diminished you. They believed your silence meant you were weak. But you were never weak. You were healing. You were gathering the strength you needed to rise in a way that would shake their perceptions to the core. Your silent struggle becomes your greatest weapon. They cannot understand how someone who was so broken now walks with such clarity, such purpose, such quiet confidence. They cannot comprehend how someone who was once drowning now stands with unshakable peace. They cannot accept that you turned your suffering into wisdom, and that transformation unsettles them. Your healing is not only a recovery, it is a revelation. It reveals the depth of your character. It reveals the power of your endurance. It reveals the quiet strength you carried all along. While they saw someone fragile, you were becoming someone formidable. While they expected your wounds to trap you, you were learning how to break free. While they assumed your silence was surrender, it was preparation. They are miserable watching you heal, because your journey exposes a truth they never wanted to face. You were stronger in your weakest moments than they are in their strongest ones. The battles you fought alone have made you someone they cannot intimidate, manipulate, or control. And now your healing stands as a testament to a resilience they do not possess. This is why your recovery disturbs them. It forces them to confront the reality that you are not who they thought you were. You are far greater, far stronger and far more unbreakable than they ever imagined. Healing carries a quiet power that unsettles those who expected you to stay in chaos. When your inner world was filled with confusion, doubt, and emotional storms, they felt comfortable around you. Your brokenness made them feel balanced. Your sadness made them feel stable. Your emotional disarray made their lives look orderly by comparison. But the moment you begin to choose peace over conflict, clarity over confusion, and calm over chaos, something inside them starts to tremble. Harmony within inside him soon starts to swell. The analogy people likes to use for clarity over confusion and calm over chaos, something inside them starts to tremble. Your peace becomes an irritation they cannot explain, because it disrupts the emotional ecosystem that once benefited them. When you were hurting, they understood you. They knew how to navigate your brokenness. They knew how to speak to you, how to manipulate your emotions, how to stir your insecurities, how to anchor you to places you didn't belong. But when you switch to a place of internal peace, their influence begins to fade. They no longer know how to reach you. You no longer react the way you used to. You no longer break the way you once did. They try to provoke you, but you are calm. They try to pull you into old arguments, but you remain silent. They try to reopen old wounds, but you have healed them. This disarms them completely. Peace is powerful because it reveals emotional maturity. It shows that you have learned to regulate yourself instead of surrendering to impulsive reactions. It shows that you no longer allow external situations to disturb your inner world. This level of stability irritates people who were used to your instability. Your calmness highlights their emotional chaos. Your maturity exposes their immaturity. Your quiet confidence makes their insecurity louder. They feel threatened because you no longer move according to their expectations. Your peace also marks the end of their control. When someone is emotionally chaotic, they are predictable. They react quickly, strongly, and often irrationally, and that makes them easy to manipulate. But when someone has healed, their responses become thoughtful, intentional, and rooted in self-awareness. This makes you unpredictable in the eyes of those who are used to steering your emotions. They no longer know what to expect from you, and that unpredictability terrifies them. They cannot control what they no longer understand. People who depended on your brokenness become visibly uncomfortable when you step into peace. They mistake your calm for arrogance. They interpret your silence as rejection. They see your boundary setting as disrespect. But these reactions say more about them than about you. Your peace bothers them because it removes the emotional access they once had. It strips them of the ability to create chaos in your life. It takes away the satisfaction they used to feel when you were reactive, sensitive, and wounded. Your new calm dismantles their old strategies. Your healing brings you to a level of emotional intelligence that many never expected from you. You begin to recognize patterns you once tolerated. You see manipulation you once excused. You understand motives you once ignored. This awareness allows you to detach without aggression, protect your peace without guilt, and move forward without carrying unnecessary burdens. And that frustrates those who thrived when you carried emotional weight on your shoulders. They do not know how to interact with the version of you that no longer breaks under pressure. Your peace forces people to confront themselves. They see you handle rejection with grace while they crumble from minor inconveniences. They watch you respond with patience while they remain controlled by impulses. They observe your calmness and feel exposed because it shows how much work they haven't done. They expected you to stay in turmoil because turmoil kept you at their level. Peace elevates you above them, and that elevation makes them uncomfortable. This discomfort turns into irritation. They become easily annoyed by your silence, your stillness, your emotional balance. They don't understand how someone who once cried so easily now smiles without effort. They don't know how someone who once overreacted now chooses not to respond at all. They can't comprehend how someone who once felt fragile now walks with steady strength. It conflicts with the identity they built for you in their mind. Your peace destroys the narrative they created about you. Healing transforms you in ways they never anticipated. It reshapes your presence. It strengthens your boundaries. It softens your heart, but sharpens your mind. Your calm becomes your shield. Your silence becomes your power, and your peace becomes your revenge. Not because you sought revenge, but because peace is the one thing they never wanted you to find. They are miserable watching you heal, because your peace proves a truth they cannot deny. You are no longer living in the pain that once made you vulnerable to them. You have stepped into a version of yourself they cannot manipulate, cannot provoke, and cannot diminish. And that realization leaves them frustrated, powerless, and exposed. Healing reshapes the landscape of your relationships, especially with those who once enjoyed unlimited access to your emotions, your time, and your vulnerability. When you begin to reclaim your sense of self, something subtle but unmistakable happens. Doors that were once wide open begin to close, not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of growth. You start to recognize who belonged in your inner world and who merely wandered through it because you didn't yet know how to guard it. This shift does not go unnoticed. Those who are used to walking freely into your life begin to feel shut out, and that discomfort quickly turns into resentment. They feel as if something has been taken from them, when in reality they were simply returned to the place they should have never moved beyond. For a long time your brokenness made you accessible. You tolerated behaviors that hurt you. You accepted excuses you shouldn't have. You allowed people to come and go because part of you believed you didn't deserve better. You kept your heart unlocked because you were afraid of losing anyone, even those who repeatedly wounded you. But healing changes that. When you finally begin to understand your worth, you stop offering unlimited entry to people who never earned the right to stay. You start placing boundaries around your spirit, not to push others away, but to protect the peace you fought so hard to find. These new boundaries confuse those who relied on your openness. Suddenly they feel the shift. They notice that you no longer answer every message instantly. You no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as humor. You no longer accept half-hearted apologies. You no longer say it's okay when it isn't. You no longer break yourself into pieces to keep someone else whole. This is when they begin to panic, not because they genuinely care about you, but because your healing disrupts the comfort they found in your lack of boundaries. Losing access to someone who is healing feels like a personal loss to those who once benefited from your brokenness. They were accustomed to your availability, your softness, your willingness to forgive endlessly. Your pain made you permissive. Your healing makes you discerning. And that discernment feels like rejection to people who only valued your compliance. They never expected you to grow strong enough to say no. They never imagined the day would come when you would guard your heart with the same dedication you once used to give it away. What unsettles them most is that your healing makes you unpredictable. Before, they knew exactly how to trigger you, how to guilt you, how to manipulate your emotions. But now, you respond differently. You pause before reacting. You think before speaking. You choose silence over conflict. You choose distance over drama. This new version of you can no longer be controlled or emotionally steered. The power they once had over you evaporates, and they feel it deeply. Your healing also exposes the real nature of the relationship. When you begin to pull back, when you stop over-giving, when you start demanding respect, some people reveal that they were never there for your benefit. They were there for their own. The moment the benefits disappear, so do they. And though this revelation hurts, it also frees you. You begin to see that losing access to you is a consequence of their own actions, not your cruelty. Healing shows you who was drawn to your spirit and who was drawn to your wounds. People who had access without responsibility begin to resent the boundaries that healing creates. They call you distant, changed, cold. They accuse you of acting different, unaware that the version of you they miss was a version built from unhealed trauma. They do not miss you, they miss the you that made their life easier, the you who said yes too quickly, the you who accepted crumbs and called it connection, the you who believed mistreatment was normal. Healing strips away that version, leaving only the strong, clear, self-respecting version you were always meant to become, and that version of you is difficult for them to handle. Your healing denies them the emotional shortcuts they once relied on. They can no longer manipulate you with guilt because you no longer feel obligated to suffer for others. They can no longer bait you into arguments because you now choose your peace. They can no longer drain you with their chaos because your boundaries filter what enters your world. Your life becomes structured, intentional, peaceful, and their access is restricted to levels that match their behavior. This is why they feel miserable watching you heal. Healing forces them to face the fact that access to you was a privilege they abused. Your growth proves that you were never the problem, they were. Your boundaries reveal their selfishness. Your distance exposes their intentions. And their discomfort is simply the byproduct of losing a level of control they were never entitled to. You are no longer available in the ways that kept them comfortable. You no longer shrink to make them feel bigger. You no longer bend to keep them satisfied. Your healing has elevated you to a place they can't reach unless they grow too, and growth is something they've spent their whole lives avoiding. So they sit in misery, watching the door close, not because you shut them out, but because they never valued the access they were given. Now that you've healed, that access must be earned, not assumed. Healing forces people to confront realities they spent years avoiding, and nothing exposes someone's hidden motives faster than watching you become whole again. When your journey of recovery becomes visible, the shift it creates in others is immediate. They begin to see themselves reflected in your rising. Your strength reminds them of the weakness they've hidden. Your clarity highlights the confusion they've ignored. Your emotional intelligence exposes their immaturity. This confrontation doesn't happen through your words. It happens through your transformation. And their reaction reveals everything you never noticed before. Some people recoil at your growth because it forces them to acknowledge the role they played in your suffering. While you were healing, they were hoping you'd remain wounded. While you were rebuilding your heart, they were quietly hoping you would never notice the damage they caused. Your rise is not just a sign of your strength. It is a mirror that reflects their wrongdoing. They cannot stand that mirror. They cannot bear the truth staring back at them. So instead of admitting the harm they inflicted, they pretend you're attacking them simply by healing. Your healing unmasks the intentions they tried so hard to bury. When you were broken, they could hide behind excuses. I didn't mean it. You're too sensitive. It wasn't that serious. Those lies crumble when they see you becoming strong enough to call the behavior what it really was. Suddenly, their justifications look pathetic next to your transformation. You rising forces them to face the guilt they thought they buried. But instead of confronting it, many choose to resent you, because resentment is easier than accountability. Your healing also exposes the truth about their character. People often show their real hearts, not when you're down, but when you get up. Pay attention to their reactions when you start smiling again. Notice who grows distant when you rediscover joy. Watch who becomes irritated when your confidence returns. Observe who suddenly minimizes your progress. These reactions reveal something deeper. They were never cheering for you. They were cheering for your wounds to keep you small. Your healing removes that comfort. For some, your recovery feels like betrayal, not because you harmed them, but because you stopped allowing them to harm you. They interpret your growth as rejection. They twist your boundaries into accusations. They label your healing as arrogance. But these responses reveal one thing. They only valued you when they could benefit from your brokenness. They were invested in you staying in the same emotional place because keeping you wounded kept them morally superior. Healing removes that hierarchy, and they resent the equality it creates. Your transformation also reveals the limits of their compassion. Anyone can feel sorry for you when you're hurting. That requires no depth. But true compassion requires celebrating someone else's healing, even when it highlights your own lack of growth. Only genuine people can rejoice when someone rises above the pain. The shallow ones grow bitter, not because you healed, but because they didn't. Your progress exposes their emotional stagnation. It confronts them with the truth that they could have healed too, but didn't. Healing also forces them to confront their own insecurities. When they see you transforming your life, they start questioning why they haven't changed theirs. Your discipline reminds them of their laziness. Your emotional maturity reveals their avoidance. Your independence highlights their dependence on external validation. Your peace exposes their inner turmoil. Instead of turning inward and growing, they turn outward and criticize you. It is easier to resent your healing than to begin their own. Your healing shifts the dynamic in relationships where you were once the emotionally weaker one. The person they used to lecture now speaks with clarity. The person they used to manipulate now sets boundaries. The person they used to dismiss now holds their head high. This reversal is unsettling for them because it removes the power imbalance they relied on. Your strength exposes their fragility. Your growth exposes their stagnation. Your independence exposes their emotional immaturity. They grow uncomfortable because they are losing the version of you that made them feel superior. They grow irritated because they no longer have access to your vulnerability. They grow resentful because your healing proves they were never as strong, mature, or innocent as they portrayed themselves to be. Your healing shines a light on the truth they spent years hiding. Instead of growing, apologizing, or evolving, they choose the path of bitterness. But the truth remains. The only reason they react this way is because your healing reveals what their character truly is. They are miserable watching you rise because your strength exposes everything they never had the courage to become. Healing carries a quiet justice that life delivers without you having to lift a single finger. When someone wounds a pure heart, the consequences don't show up immediately. They unfold slowly, silently, and with a precision that only truth can orchestrate. As you begin to rise, life begins to rearrange itself around you. And suddenly, the people who once caused your pain start facing storms of their own. Not because you wished for it, not because you fought back, but because life has a way of balancing what was broken. Their actions eventually return to them, and your healing becomes the evidence that the cycle has turned. They watch you recover while their own world begins to show cracks. The same arrogance that gave them confidence when they hurt you now becomes their downfall. They feel a heaviness they cannot name, an emotional turbulence they can't escape, because each choice they made finds its way back home. They never expected life to hold them accountable. They believed they could betray, manipulate, and harm without consequence. But the universe does not forget. The heart remembers. And every ripple they created returns to its source. Your healing makes their consequences louder. When you were broken, they felt untouchable. They walked with a boldness that came from believing your wounds were permanent, your silence was weakness, your hurt was proof of their strength. But when you begin to heal, when you rise above the pain they caused, life shifts its attention. What once fell on you now falls on them. What once crushed your spirit begins to bend theirs. They feel the weight of their choices, and suddenly the pain they cause no longer feels distant. It lives with them, follows them, confronts them. Healing is not just recovery, it is revelation. As you grow stronger, their actions become clearer. You see the truth of what they did, and life begins to show them that truth in their own experiences. They lose the stability they once mocked you for lacking. They crave the peace they stole from you. They long for the happiness they obstructed in your life. And while you rise into clarity, they fall into confusion. This reversal isn't vindictive. It's natural law. Hurt does not disappear just because it's ignored. It returns to the one who created it. Your healing activates the consequences of their choices. When you heal, you break the cycle of pain they depended on. You stop absorbing the harm they directed toward you. You stop being the emotional cushion for their own emptiness. And when that happens, the impact they once placed on your shoulders returns to their own. They feel lost because you no longer carry the weight for them. They feel empty because your energy no longer fills the void inside them. They feel restless because the peace they stole has now been restored to you, and they have none left. Life is not punishing them because you healed. Life is revealing them. Your healing exposes who they truly were, and their own consequences reveal who they still are. They wanted you to stay wounded because your pain protected them from accountability. But healing removes that shield. Healing gives you eyes to see clearly, strength to walk away, and wisdom to never fall back into what broke you. And this terrifies them, because without your pain, they can no longer hide from the outcome of their actions. Your rising becomes a reminder of their falling, not because you wished it, but because they taught life what they deserved through their choices. They feel miserable watching you heal because your recovery signals the arrival of their own reckoning. While you step into peace, they step into discomfort. While you regain purpose, they lose direction. While you grow into someone wiser, stronger, and more grounded, they face the emptiness created by their own hands. Healing is your liberation and their reflection. It frees you and confronts them. It strengthens you and exposes them. They are miserable not simply because you healed, but because healing revealed the truth they never wanted to face. The harm they caused did not disappear, it returned home, just as your strength returned to you. And now, as you step into wholeness, they must live with the consequences of the wounds they inflicted. Your healing becomes the quiet proof that life has finally shifted its balance. Healing is not just the end of your suffering. It is the beginning of your clarity, your strength, and your freedom. As you rise, the truth of every relationship, every intention, and every betrayal becomes unmistakably clear. You learn who truly cared, who silently benefited from your pain, and who feared the version of you that could think, feel, and choose for yourself. Your healing exposes hidden motives, reveals genuine hearts, and removes those who were never meant to walk into your future. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to fight back. You don't have to demand justice. By choosing to heal, you already won. Your growth is the response. Your peace is the answer. Your transformation is the justice. The very people who once believed you would never rise are now forced to watch you walk into a life they cannot disturb. Their misery is not your responsibility. Their discomfort is not your burden, and their reactions are not your concern. You did the hardest thing a wounded soul can do. You chose to become whole again. And now, every step you take is a reminder that the pain that tried to break you only revealed your strength. Healing has made you untouchable in ways they never imagined. You no longer live in the shadows of who hurt you. You walk in the light of who you've become. Move forward with confidence. Stand in your truth. Protect your peace. Your healing is your victory, and no one can take that away from you.